I'm Collie Fulford. I'm one of the fellows this year. I'm feeling rather emotional today about the work that we've been doing for this year together, and I'm, following on Shelvia and Tony's presentations. I'm feeling flooded with the value that we have been afforded and the intellectual strength of my colleagues and the creativity of my colleagues, and I'm just so pleased to be among you and to have our community continuing to grow and build. So, I'm an associate professor at North Carolina Central University. I work in the Department of Language and Literature. I teach writing, rhetoric, composition theory. And when I started the fellowship and when I proposed my work for the fellowship, I had something entirely different in mind from what I wound up producing. So much has happened this year for me as a result of being connected with this community of thinkers that I'm only going to be able to give a little bit of a slice. And so, Vic, I hope you're keeping me on time, right? Okay, give me a little more. So the slice that I'm going to try to pare down to is going to elide a lot of the research potential that's come out of these relationships, and it's going to focus more on the pedagogical developments that have come from thinking in community with a lot of different people. So I want to riff off Tony a little bit more here, which is early in our fellowship, Charmaine and I had the gift of funding to travel not as presenters, which is so rare for us, right? The gift of funding to just go to Haystack in Florida and listen and learn. And one of the things that I heard at Haystack came from a former student of ours. And that was a keynote speaker there, Tressie McMillan Cottom, and she said, at a perfect time for me to hear it, that it's really critical that we'd be willing to fail in front of our students. And that has been so helpful because I now do that quite frequently. And I can now say that it's not a mistake, it's actually got pedagogical purpose. So I'll share with you today some of the results of failing repeatedly in front of my students and with my students, and like accepting with them the fact that working on challenging projects means often having a sense of like, I'm not good enough, or I don't know this tool well enough, or I don't even know the content well enough. So here we go. So I've been applying the digital humanities concepts mostly in my professional writing courses. So I've got 3 that I'm working on right now. I teach technical writing. I've taught this course so many times, probably more than 20 times in my years at Central. It's an intro to technical writing course that draws on people who don't intend to become technical writers. Lots of them are social work students, recreational studies students, anybody from across the whole university can take this, and they are often now juniors and even sophomores. But I started piloting what I was going to be doing with the digital humanities in the fall of 2017, and that was in my 3105, this is Introduction to Professional Writing course, and that draws more on seniors, juniors, more in mass comm and in English, and I had some stray folks from different areas. So that was a lovely small course, there were about 12 people in it, and there I could take that principle of trying new things, being brave about it, and having a small workshop-style course in which to pilot some work. Now, all this time as I was beginning this work, I don't expect you to actually read this, right? It's up there as my guidepost instead of doing a PowerPoint. So as I was piloting the material and realizing I wasn't going to follow through on my initial plans, which were about transforming Composition 2, making it like a radically different course, imbuing all this digital content, making it like Durham-centric, all these things. I was just going to transform this course, and I realized, nah, I don't have the power to actually do this. That's a collaboratively created course with a department with many, many people teaching it. So I backed off of that and went for something a little more in my wheelhouse. But in my heart, I was having these moments of like, oh, I'm straying from the humanities because technical communication, that sounds really applied. That sounds really nuts and bolts and must be all about the skills and like this language that's going around the university right now, excuse me, Provost, which is market readiness. And so I'm having this concern in my heart that I have somehow drifted away from humanities and somebody's gonna know this and they're gonna smack me, right? So these like moments of trepidation, like, no, I'm too busy teaching, I'm too busy experimenting to really worry about this, but intellectually I'm a little bit concerned, right? So I do have these moments. But I also had this sense during this whole year that I was like trying to figure out for myself as a professor, am I actually a humanities person? And if so, what does that mean? And so I'm like, what is the humanities anyway? So when we were at Haystack, one of my chief questions was, what are the humanities? And who am I in the humanities? And what is the humanities for in my more applied courses? So that's haunting me and working with me over time. So I want to show you something that happened was that Russell and I went to, we're blessed to be able to go to the second ever symposium on teaching composition and rhetoric at HBCUs. Now this was covered by another funding source besides the Mellon grant, but it was an occasion for us to both present about what we're doing here. And when I was there, I met with Cecilia Shelton, and Cece is a really, really wonderful scholar. She's a PhD student at Eastern Carolina University, and she was on a panel that was talking about TechCom, and TechCom in relation to digital work, and I was like, wow, what she was saying made me realize that indeed the work we do in TechCom courses is humanities work if we're doing it right? So shout out to Cece on what she offered to me. And she pointed me to concepts that continued to make me think well and better, I hope, about what I'm doing in my TechCom courses. So let me just show you some pictures because they're prettier to look at. So one of the things that I developed this semester was a love for sticky notes. Our fellowship award, it gave me a chance to go. I asked Chris, can I buy like, Staples supplies? She's like, uh-huh. And so I made this massive order to Staples, and it included a $100 box of sticky notes that I'm using in my home office, I'm using in my classroom, and this was yesterday. So yesterday I'm trying to conceptualize what is the connection between TechCom and digital humanities. And here's my, this stuff that I'm thinking about, TechCom and digital humanities, and this is what it looked like yesterday. And so the critical questions I was asking in order to come up with this was, what makes it humanities work? What makes it digital work? And then what makes it technical and professional writing work? So this is an easy connection. Digital work and technical communications. You can't do technical and professional communications this year, last year, 20 years ago, unless it's also digital work. So that's an easy connection. And my work this year was around becoming more technically proficient in a lot of different tools that would help me teach them better, so that I wasn't always failing in front of my classes, all right? But this part is the harder sell for me, is the harder thinking for me. This is what this kind of brainstorming work looks like with a little, 24 hours of settling down and working with a mind map tool that's more digital, right? So what I realized about what makes it digital is that it involves building technical proficiencies. We use exploratory processes. There's expectation, and I think this is really critical about digital work. There's expectation that there will be technological change even while you are learning the new tool. That's just part of the territory with digital work. What makes it humanities is the ability to, and the requirement to ask critical questions, like my colleagues have been asking about what's left out, what's not in the trace, what can we contribute, what does it mean to be a person in this field? Those kind of critical questions are really valuable. It also means privileging creative processes. such as the kind of playing around with sticky notes in the class, right? That kind of thing is just creative work made visible. Digital part, very cool. The humanities part also asks to use metaphorical thinking. Before coming in today, I had maybe three different presentations I could have offered, but one of them was around looking at the metaphor of the banyan tree as a metaphor for the kind of growth that happens with a collective like us over a whole year working together. And I don't know if any of you have seen a banyan tree. They're massive. I don't know if they're the biggest tree on the planet, but they're so massive. And I have a drawn version of one of these up in my wall at my home office that represents all the strands of learning that I've had done this year as a result of this fellowship. So that's like the metaphorical thinking. I think of that as the humanities side of me, as opposed to like these linear sticky notes things is a little bit more, I don't know, statistically kind of looking. The interdisciplinarity is part of what the humanities encourages, and then ethical considerations to go alongside other kinds of considerations. I think that's come out in the keynote speeches here very much, as well as Tony and Shelvia's talks. So those seem to me like, oh, these are the areas that make this work, humanities work. The technical communication part here, what makes it tech comm is that it's always about being applied. It's applied learning, applied skills. It's problem-oriented work. It is client-oriented work. It is always rhetorical. So I put these areas into proximity with each other in order to start thinking about what does it mean? Are there some principles that I can extract from here? So the principles I'm up with are for teaching digital humanities tech comm are that genres, processes, and attitudes can all be modeled, and they should be. And by the attitudes part is the new part for me, which is attitudes of being open to change, open to failure in front of people. The purposes come before technologies. I think that's a humanities twist on tech comm. A purpose before the technologies. Ethics come before expedience. That too is a humanities twist. Learning is collaborative, it's perpetual, and my students taught me this, it's playful. When it's good learning, it's really playful. And then finally, and this is from CC's talk, is that school, work, and civics are porous domains, and just because it's tech comm doesn't mean it's also not civics work. So, good enough? Okay, I'm done.